Good evening, Bill Wadman.
Good evening, Sandy. How are you?
Well, I think both of us are actually feeling a bit under the weather in a way, aren't we?
Well, maybe it's raining outside.
Hmm. Tonight we're talking about conversations. You'll notice that the usual title slide is just speaking of seeing conversations rather than speaking of seeing conversations, a conversation with Bill Wadman. But you are Bill Wadman, and I am going to
I
be
am.
conversing with you.
I'm
Uh,
conversified.
don't you just love a good conversation?
I'm a big conversationalist.
Have you always
Pro
been like that?
conversation. Yes, but more so as I've gotten older.
Hmm. And would you say that in conversation, I know that this is obviously very much about who one is conversing with also, but would you pride yourself on your conversational skill?
Yes.
Why?
I don't know. I can talk to anybody about anything. Um, I like it. I like talking to people about stuff that I know about. I like talking to people about stuff that I don't know about to see if I can sort of suck some information out of them, like a
Ah.
sponge.
So the conversation has an agenda.
Yeah, I want to keep it interesting. I want to pass time in a positive way. Yeah.
Okay.
Find out how other people tick.
I mean, I think up to a point I would be the same as you until you got to the part about sucking up information out of other people.
Well, not like I'm not like give me information like but I if you know a lot about something I don't know anything about, I'm willing to interrogate you about it. I'm fascinated by stuff.
Mm. Okay, so
Why
conversation.
is conversation is different for you?
No, I mean, very similar. I enjoy conversation. I like finding out from people how they feel about things. But there's a different emphasis there, isn't there? That much as I enjoy conversation, probably equally as you do, um, I almost feel like I don't need to have conversations that are about information as such, even though, of
Okay.
course, there's an exchange of information. I'm not looking for somebody to teach me something, though they are inadvertently simply by being themselves. But I do like finding out from people how they feel about things. That's always been a fascination to me. So from a young age, speaking to my classmates when I was little, or, my grandparents about how it felt to be old, or, whatever it's been, it's always been something that I've really enjoyed. But what I realize now is that it's actually becoming harder to converse about things in so many
In
ways and
society or as you get older?
in society, I think.
Okay.
And that's something I've noticed. You and I have started to shy away from things when we talk. We've always been a bit reluctant, I think, Bill, to touch upon certain subjects, and I
Well,
suspect that's
speak for yourself, my friend. No, I think
because
maybe it's because you live in a country with libel laws.
I think, from my point of view, it's more because of my profession,
Ah, okay.
and I'm very conscious that you know, I don't think for a second my students watch any of these shows, but if they did, or if their parents did, I would never want to put my school in a position where they had to defend my personal opinions
Sure.
about a variety of topics that are pertinent and particular to, let's say, young people at the moment.
Shouldn't you be able to though?
Well, this is why we're looking at this tonight.
Okay.
Conversations, of course, are this vital thing, aren't they? They bring us close to each other, or they can tell us who to not be close to,
Do you think that, yeah, sure. Do you think that, do you see conversation as a game?
in a playful way. And again, depending on who it's with, yes.
Okay. Uh, do you think that, is there an objective or is it nebulous, the goal?
Usually nebulous for me, which is why I was interested when I jokingly said you've got an agenda to your conversation.
Yeah. The agenda is nebulous though. It's not like I know exactly what I want to know. I'm just like, oh, that's fascinating. Let's go that direction.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I enjoy talking to you because I find that here you are, Mr. Polymath, It doesn't matter that we have had a different skill set developed in each of us, or that we live on different sides of an ocean, or any of that. We do converse with each other. And
Yes.
I mean, from my perspective, conversing with you, of course, it teaches me things. It teaches me mainly about myself, of course.
Yeah.
Um,
By how you feel about what I say, kind of thing.
yes, and also I you make fun of me to do this, but I do watch back what we talk about, because then I feel like I get another chance, it's like another bite of the apple. And that conversation is about, really, then that's my inner conversation.
Yeah.
So we don't plan so much what we say. In actual fact, often I share the slides I've picked, and our conversation doesn't always go as I suspect it will. And I love that about conversing with you, because it's
But
fresh.
sometimes it makes you frustrated.
Sure, but my abiding sense of conversation with you is that it's usually imbued with actually a sense of trust.
Hmm.
So I feel like I can talk with you, and you and I have now been speaking for years
Well,
together.
there's probably some like you. I can imagine that you feel safe talking to me. Like I'm not going to do anything to hurt you verbally. You know what I mean?
Sure, but also we can have a disagreement,
Sure.
and I feel safe to have a disagreement. What I'm finding more and more is that in other places, spaces, and with other people, the conversation becomes, it lacks integrity. And
Because of social media, because of the political climate, all that kind of stuff.
it's because of my fear. I'm
Yeah.
kind of asking you about this as well. And I know you're
Okay.
in a different field of work in so many ways to me. You're working often one-to-one with somebody who's a private
Hmm.
client. I'm working in the public sector with thousands of people, and especially young and impressionable people. Conversations I have on a daily basis have to be very carefully regulated.
Hmm.
And I'm looking at how that's impacted my ability to truly converse. Uh, if it's enhanced it, actually.
Do you think if you took, oh, I see. I was going to say, do you think if you took more chances or said the things you self-censor, that you would be more productive in teaching?
Well, I noticed that, for example, at the moment we're studying uh, euthanasia. So
Okay.
I have a group of Year 10 students at the moment who I'm their tutor, and we are discussing euthanasia, the right to die. And so I can give them anecdotes from my own life. I talked about being the person who was asked when my uncle was ill in hospital, having had a stroke, did we want to resuscitate? And that was then down to me. And though that's not the grand decision of him choosing to die and is that right or wrong, the fact is I was able to share that. But that's almost like telling a story. What I probably don't do is I don't say I fundamentally agree with the right to die.
Right. Gotcha.
I don't say that. And whereas I would imagine that a lot of other people are, imagine this, other people are walking around having conversations with total disregard for kind of what they say. To be
Yeah.
measured in conversation is, in one way, a shame, and in another, it exercises another muscle in the brain, I think.
It's almost like being media trained for the world.
Yes. I mean, I put the painting by Matisse. We've not
By
actually
the
ever.
way, should I put on a blue and white shirt? Because would this work better?
Yes. I thought, just grow a goatee, would you? I should have worn my green and black top, and you could, as you say, put on your striped pajamas.
Seeing if I was seeing if I had one over there.
It's quite funny. But anyway, I put it on here because, again, this is testament to exactly what we're saying. I actually thought we would start in quite a pedestrian way about, how men and women communicate with each other, which itself could be loaded, because then we set ourselves up to have to talk about things in binary terms. when
Sure.
actually a conversation perhaps should be right now about whether those binary terms uh, are freely discussed.
Sure. I mean, then you get into stereotypes, you get into sex, you get into all kinds of things, right? That like if a man and a woman are conversing, like there's all kinds of secondary things going through it potentially.
Sure, and also, this painting particularly, I was just saying a moment ago, I don't think we've actually ever talked about Matisse.
I don't know that we have either. Are you a Matisse fan?
Not particularly.
Yeah, there's a handful that I really like, and then overall,
Hmm.
yeah.
Anyway, this is obviously the conversation. It struck me as an unusual pose. There's a real sense of this carrying through. This is a rather timeless position, isn't it, for the male figure looming over the the seated female. I do think of this, a kind of stereotype.
See, it's funny. I look at it and I think it's a man who's standing while the woman gets to be comfortable sitting in a chair. So,
And here we are seeing through our own lenses.
yeah.
Mm. I just thought, a very similar period of time, slightly later, Vanessa Bell, part of the Bloomsbury group, also a conversation. This time it's
Well,
women.
three people, that's a whole other ball of wax.
Yeah, but also all women.
Yes.
And the kind of the intensity with which they are speaking with each other is something that is very familiar, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those fantastic conversations that often aren't planned but are juicy and full of, well, yeah, intensity. Not necessarily intrigue, although often good conversations are.
How often do you get bored in conversations, but feel like you can't extricate yourself?
Is that a hint, Bill?
No, 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 no. Like honestly, like is it like are you ever at a party or at a thing and you're talking to somebody or a work event and you're having you're talking to somebody and you're like, I really don't care about what we're talking about, but I'm just keeping this going because this is what we're supposed to do.
I don't,
There's an obligation to conversation, I guess is what I'm saying in
well,
polite society.
I don't really have the same issue as you in that
Okay.
regard because I don't often, like you, I don't often go even to parties, for example.
Oh yes, I'm a
I'm not,
big party person.
no, but what I mean is that you, again, through your work perhaps, are
Mhm.
talking to people
Yep.
in a similar peer group, maybe. Whereas my peer group, I have much more individualized friendships rather than group,
Hmm.
friendship group. So I'm not in company enough in that way, I don't think, any longer, to be exposed to the kind of conversation that I think you're talking about, where you might have an extended group of friends and you meet, or if you're meeting new people at like a private view or something, or,
Yeah.
I'm so seldom in those positions now. I mean, in fact, actually, just whilst we're on that topic, this evening, I'm so sorry, Steve Pill, fantastic painter. I had to bail out of your private view tonight because I wasn't well. It's his MA show in Boscombe. If anyone wants to go to the depot and have a look at some fantastic painting, particularly, it's the masters class from AUB have got their show on there just now. And of course, other shout out to the amazing Sam Jackson himself, an extraordinary painter who is their lead tutor, their lead practitioner. I'm so sorry I couldn't go. I doubt very much whether I would have had a boring conversation at that private view.
Well, there you
Uh,
go. Yeah.
yeah. But
That's like mine's right there.
anyway, I'm sure for you there's a slightly different feeling of this because you have a greater scope, I suppose. You live in a very, very big city with a
I'm
really.
also fascinated by these first two paintings. Both have like a lot of stuff out the window. The detail is all out the window.
Hmm. Well, I don't read this as a window. I think this is a theatre.
Oh, I see. Oh, people down there in a theater box or something.
Hmm.
I hadn't read that way. Okay.
That's only how I read it. I mean, this is painted, she's a great kind of avant-garde painter, really,
Yeah,
modern painter. And this obviously painted, at least in part, when the Great War had started.
sure.
I'm not sure it's documented anywhere what these women were supposed to be talking about. To me, it's got a sort of sense that they may have been talking about they may have been talking about something grand like war, but
Sure.
equally they could have been talking about
Gossiping about
the husband.
somebody's husband or whatever. Yeah.
Mm. But is that because we're now in a stereotype because it's women talking?
Maybe.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, sure.
Mm. Anyway, I mean, I just put this in here because as a photograph of a photograph, I really love this. Not because I feel anything for these people in the foreground in front of the Avedon photograph,
Yep.
but it's because it prompted me to think more about how the art we see gives us conversation. Not just you and I, but art is art a conversation piece
I, I mean, it certainly is for you and I, right? Um,
uh, for anyone. If you show anyone an image, they
if you
probably
ask them, do you feel like you need to ask people when you show them something? What do you think of this? Or even more, what do you think of that yellow flower behind the person or something?
I'll share something about the experience of living with me. We go sometimes up to town, up to London, because I want to go and see a show,
Sure.
an art show. And David will come in the gallery with me. And David likes art, he likes looking at art. But when we were first together, I realized that he was getting really angry. And I couldn't understand why. And he explained that it's because I don't talk whilst I'm looking. Like all my conversation about art is kind of after the fact, which is why I love the idea that art brings conversation out. But for me, very personally, I'm more inclined to wander off on my own in a almost like a reverie of looking.
Because your brain is processing or because your brain is blank?
Well,
Not blank in a bad way, just in a sort of you're letting it float kind of way.
yeah, I think it's a float. I'm in that sort of floating space. I find it
Okay.
very difficult to be in the floating space and also have a conversation because perhaps similar to you, David wants information from me.
Sure.
I'm not saying you want information from me, but your earlier comment
Give
about
me information, Sandy.
yeah, I'm sure you know much more than I do. Um, but anyway, I would like you to think now about, a piece of art that you've seen that has given you great conversation.
Wait, can I, before I answer that, can I comment on this picture?
Sure.
I find it interesting because this is probably from the late 80s when all those pictures came out, right? Just based on the glasses and the clothes and whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder how many of those people were there because they wanted to see the Avedon pictures. How many people were there because like the Avedon show was the place to be?
Mm.
How many of them are not even talking about the photography? They're talking about like what restaurant they're going to afterwards or, whether their wife's surgery went well or whatever, right?
But doesn't that mean that art anyway is still a scaffold for our conversations?
Yeah, because it gets people together regardless of whether they're talking about the art.
But isn't that okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I just found it interesting because, like, you would think, oh yeah, all these people are standing around talking about Avedon's work, and it's like, no, probably very few of them actually were.
Mm.
Um, anyway, you were saying, I'm sorry, your question was,
Well, I'm just wondering about something you've seen, a piece of visual art that you've seen, or it could be a sculpture that you've been with that's really given you conversation, that's given you things to talk about, that's,
uh,
maybe it's been
yeah,
standing somewhere in front of something with Heather or with someone you care about and you've thought, wow,
you know,
I want to talk about this.
yeah. There was a we just saw my friend Chris and I went and saw the Man Ray show that's at the Met right now that just opened,
Mm,
and honestly, overall, I was sort of about it. I didn't think it was. Man Ray is one of those people whose good work is incredible, and then some of the rest of it I could take or leave.
mm,
but one thing that he had in there, there were these strips of 35 millimeter film where it wasn't actually individual photographs. It was like he had exposed the whole strip over the top of something, sort of. And I just thought, oh, that's so interesting. Because what a lot of people don't know is that like a 35 millimeter strip of film isn't made up of those frames. It's just a strip. And when you expose it, you get the frames. So you can expose the whole thing at once on like a light table kind of thing, which is
Mhm.
what he seemed to have done. And they had these, it was like from the beginning to the end of the strip was almost a story that he had created along that. And I just thought, man, that's like something I never would have thought of, you know? And it's rare for I've seen a lot of photography. I've seen a lot of like photographic techniques, and to see somebody have done something in the 1920s that made me go, "Oh, that's a really cool idea." And it was 100 years old.
Mm.
I don't know. It was just it was exciting in a way that I didn't expect. Um, but that got me just talking to my friend about the technique and the idea of it and how he probably did it and all these kinds of things. It was very much about the work.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I don't know. There's one example.
But I
But
mean,
sometimes yeah,
isn't that great that we could talk analytically for a long time about images? It was, I'm not saying it was a struggle to choose images for this, but up
sure,
to a point, it was difficult to narrow down what I could show in this presentation for us to talk to actually, because really any image would do.
yeah,
And actually, I feel a bit like I've been quite lazy because I've given us images that are actually, called a conversation or the
sure,
conversation or people in conversation,
yeah.
where I could
Literal
actually
Nancy
have
over here.
I could have chosen images that were about, formal elements within a frame of,
Sure,
two objects coexisting, or, there's so many ways in which visual art is actually about a conversation. It's a conversation
sure.
between an artist and an audience, isn't it?
Or
Art.
juxtaposition of objects. I mean, it's like, we can go all the way down to nothing. Yeah,
But I mean, I just want to finish partly because Chris Steele-Perkins died last week on the 8th, Magnum photographer, photojournalist. Um,
that kid is not happy. The
well,
tomato on her dress is though.
this is not because this is people in conversation. This is again about this idea that we perhaps should be having conversations that are difficult. And I think that art often gives us the start point for those conversations. Artists can be really brave, can't they, to show us
Sure.
things? And I
Yeah.
suspect that photojournalists are at the absolute coalface of that bravery. Um, this is Street Corner, West Belfast from 1978, peak of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. What's it showing us? It's not showing us a kind of expected view of sectarianism, for example, or
No, it's just
it's not
some
even show us.
teenage kids, hooligans.
Sure, and we could have perhaps seen similar photographs of young people from any urban setting. I mean,
Yeah,
Steele Perkins photographed in Glasgow and Govan as well,
sure.
in the 70s. Really very, in some ways, challenging images because it really laid bare the poverty of places like Govan and the Gorbals and those kind of inner city dwellings. I mean, that's all been demolished now and rejuvenated and gentrified subsequently. But photographs like this give us a human face to things that we've struggled to speak to.
Yeah,
And I'm sure that there are equivalents now, but look at me, I wasn't brave enough to show a photograph from Gaza.
sure.
I wasn't,
Yeah,
and isn't that curious? Looking now at why I chose this photograph ahead of another documentary photograph that is sparking conversation about very real issues in our world right now.
right.
I've regressed to the 1970s because it seems to soften what we can then converse about directly. But ultimately, I'm getting at photographs, images are should be part of the conversation. They can be the prompt to conversations about really difficult things.
Sure. But one person's conversation could be another person's argument.
Yeah, I mean, when I thought of the title for this evening conversations, I thought, God, there's so many things I really want to talk about, Bill. And I feel in some ways curtailed. I love that I'm paraphrasing. I don't know if it's a direct quote, but I certainly know that Steele-Perkins said something similar to, I was never neutral.
Yeah.
So he wasn't a passive observer with his camera. He
It's
was in
interesting
the
though,
conversation about what was going on in Northern Ireland.
but even as I am a photographer myself and I know a lot of news world event photographers, I
Mm.
mean that is certainly a perspective. The thing is that like would I know that just from looking at their pictures? You know what I mean? Like it's sort of it's a somewhat actively passive statement in the sense that like yeah you're doing that or you can say you're doing that or maybe you are doing that but like if you're not actually saying words people could interpret what you did in 20 different ways. So what have you actually done? You know, I
Right.
mean maybe that's the difference between representative art perhaps or and actual conversation with words which is more direct or something. I don't know.
But I wonder if we do need sometimes the bravery of artists to have the space in which to have our conversations.
Yeah, maybe.
Conversation piece, just to mention, I know that you'll know this, but the actual title, a conversation piece, that was actually a form of painting in the 18th century, wasn't it? It was kind of like the equivalent of going with your family to a photographer and having a family portrait. It was basically family or friendship portraits, usually in a kind of domestic setting, or a garden scene or something, of people, you know, lolling about or gathered together in a group. Like the group selfie equivalent from the 18th century. It's called a conversation piece. And it struck me then that, we're prompting ourselves to find a voice through art. But I think at the moment it's very tricky to say what we really mean.
Yeah. I mean, in America, you know, uh, uh, that Jimmy Kimmel late night show, a guy just lost his job because he gave an opinion on the air, you know.
Mm.
It's a it's a scary time, actually.
Well, scary times or not,
Hmm.
I'm very glad to have conversed with you, Bill, this evening.
Always a pleasure, Sandy.
Until we converse again,
Yes.
good evening.
Good night.